Hello, and welcome to this special edition of Ideas with Diana, episode 709. Part of the reason why I'm having this episode is basically is I'm concerned about attacks on free speech and what I've seen on these things about different sanctions being applied. In some ways, it reminds me of what former President Trump went through at various trials. But the other thing what it reminds me of is it reminds me about something that I always remember about with when I did American history during high school, and I was taught. Um, Many of us were taught by Mr. Manis, a respected teacher in Kenosha, and also what happens to some people may seem odd, but basically, he was he was always open-minded, and he encouraged us to read all points of view when we had American history. So the class wasn't about this happened when, that happened then. He'd actually have us read different points of view, like for example, the argument for two ocean navy. He actually would read. We actually read articles from Mann and other people at the time in the 1880s about the two ocean navy. But also nothing is about like my parents, he also respected, and many other people at that time in this area in journalism, who were the Chicago Tribune, the Chicago Sun-Times, Chicago Daily News, Milwaukee Journal, Edward R. Murrow. Edward R. Murrow had a very famous phrase. He says, "I don't choose my friends by my politics. Neither do I." When I was associate vice president of the Society for Computer Simulation, I assumed position in '93. At that time, the Cold War had ended, and I started a newsletter, Emergency Management Planning newsletter. Well, as I published this newsletter, at one point I received an email from Russia. It had a .ru on it. So it was one of the first steps after the Cold War. Russia had joined the internet. Excuse me, joined the internet. I don't like saying the internet. And it was a person from the Academy of Science in St. Petersburg, and he asked me if he could subscribe to the newsletter, and I was happy. I automatically subscribed him, and a few months later, he asked me, so well, I other people like the newsletter and other things. He says, is there any way you can send past issues? So I debated on how to send it. At that time, I only had 300 ball links, so to think about it is right now, basically, people think of when they think of internet transmission today, internet transmission today is 300 megabaud, not 30 baud, so or like that. So 1 million times slower than today. So to send this issues, it would take me 8 hours of internet time to send this. So I thought, well, okay, I'll print this out. I emailed them and I said, well, so he gave me his address, he gave me his science, street address. And then what happens in their zip code, like in other European zip codes, you put the city name and then their zip code, and then you put the country capital. So I went to the post office, and a neighborhood post office, and basically, um, the postmaster came up to me and said, "Well," he says, "Look," he says, "we can get this for you." He said, "We appreciate what you're doing." He says, "We'll help you with this." He says, "But we can't guarantee, past term. We're not sure." So what I did was basically I packaged a sense of 5 minute language to this in IBM format because I thought that'd be a common format at the time. And what happened was it eventually got there, and a colleague from Lusher wrote to me and says, "Well, just missed the staple by one inch," and his grad, and we established a great relationship. Due to that, as a scientist, many people from Russia participate in the emergency management proceedings at the Society for Computer Simulation, and also this helped us move on past the Cold War. Right now, basically, we're sort of I think in a second Cold War, and it's not really something that's deliberately done. I think it's something that was stumbled into. But this goes into what my concern is about on the tax on free speech. A few days ago, there's a post regarding how COVID was reported. and the post was from a prominent person who described about certain types of things of being told not to do and what to do and other things. And it reminds me of things that I read about in the book The Spike, about stories being spiked. And even when I listen to YouTube commentaries, when I listen to Megyn Kelly's show and other shows like that, that they have people that speak freely, it does remind me of a time when I started as a medical researcher, and the concerns I have over this stifling of free speech. When I was a medical researcher, AIDS was just starting, and I was about 27, and I would read Nature constantly, Nature magazine every week, as well as Bioscience from Cambridge and Oxford. Um, the thing is, what happens when I first saw the first micrograph of the AIDS virus, I thought to myself, God, this looks exactly like the herpes simplex. And what happened was basically I self-looked at closer, and many years later, facts came out that the AIDS virus was derived from the herpes simplex experiment gone wrong, just like COVID was derived from an experiment in, in China gone wrong as well, like that though. Um, even another part of my work as a medical researcher, the concept of apoptosis. What happened was I sort of was wondering, well, why does this stuff happen when I see these slides of cells, different things going on? This was during the first Gulf War, and at the time, again, I was in my late 20s, approaching my early 30s, and we were all told that we drank too much New Coke, that we drink way too much Coke is affecting our brains. Apoptosis doesn't exist, and we're really not practicing science. But a few years ago, I ordered a new book on immunology, and I did find apoptosis finally recognized and was recognized as early as 1992, which basically proves my thing about how I was sort of harassed to not to pursue it further. Why am I mentioning this? Because simply, when I see things about reporting um, that differs from what I would consider our standards of Edward R. Murrow and even Walter Cronkite, I'm very concerned. Like I said, I don't pick my friends by politics, and for some of you, you probably have known. I listen to news from multiple perspectives. I watch international news as RT, Deutsche Welle, France 24, BBC, and even in many science fiction films. Like in 2001, it showed one of the characters even up on the space station above Earth. I would daily listen to the BBC News. Um, so, but the point is, what happens though when I listen to different things, I'm not expecting to hear the same script one after another. But that's what I hear today since 2022. I hear the same script whether I go to CBS, NBC, ABC. But then when I do go to some other stations, conservative stations like Newsmax, Fox News, I start to hear the other part of the story, because there are 2 points to every story, two sides to every story, and also when the story comes out there, you can almost watch one channel, flip it over, and hear the same script over and over again. To me, it begs the question: Is that story really being discussed? And then, like for example, with COVID, new things coming out about COVID, about information and some information that might have been delayed or something else, or other suspected things about how it was reported. I mean, so when I see sanctions about this, even against what may be considered foreign TV stations or radio stations, I'm concerned. I'm concerned because although basically some people might say, well, you shouldn't listen to sites like RT, Deutsche Welle, France 24, BBC, and such, because you're an American. Well, what happens? My parents, I and my sister, we were taught to read many different papers. When I used to subscribe to papers, I used to subscribe to the Chicago Tribune, Wall Street Journal, Milwaukee Sentinel, and also what would happen, I'd read the Progressive magazine. Ooh, because some people nowadays would consider Progressive magazine very avant-garde. Um, and I would read many different things. And what happens, just to give a point of background, during World War II, there were many cases where there are foreign broadcasts that people in the United States listened to hear about how the sons are doing when they are captured. What happens, that didn't mean that they supported those broadcasts. It meant that basically they were listening to get information because they couldn't get information any other way from this. But this foreign broadcast was from a foreign source. However, the thing that concerns me though is like for example, I can watch RT because I have a certain TV that still has that app on there and also on the website. But what I'm concerned about is when we get to blocking websites and acting paternalistically. Yet when we have sort of favored um, news stations acting which some would suspect politically because they're Democrat and the person going that they report against is Republican. Um, some people wonder about that because when someone did a study and released it about a week ago, they found like that one person running for president who's a Democrat on Democrat stations, this person received 85% favorable news, while the Republican on Democrat stations received 85% negative news. But then when you went to stations that weren't compared it to stations that weren't Democrat, both candidates received an equal percentage of positive and negative news. Now, I wonder about why that is the case, and that shows that to me basically that is better journalism, where basically one is painted as good and one is painted as evil. I mean, even with this upcoming debate, it's moved to ABC, and there's been some facts mentioned um, that about concerns of detachment of the producer of the CEO of ABC in their attachment to one of the candidates being discussed. And again, I'll watch this with a grain of salt, but I hope basically this doesn't come down to a detachment issue there, basically, because someone's a close friend that they're not acting professionally. So we'll see. But the point is, with freedom of speech, if we don't guarantee freedom of speech for anyone, even those that have opposite opinions of us or from different parts of the world of us, freedom of speech becomes a mockery. And if we start to ban certain types of channels or sanction them because they claim that what they may say may cause someone to meddle in the wrong way, but what happens though is but we have other groups that claim that they're meddling in for their common good. Meddling is meddling. It's like two wrongs don't make a right, two meddlings don't make a right. So it's I'm very concerned, and I hope what happens with that some of these foreign stations can still stay on the air. Because even when I have friends come over, they say, "Well, let's watch RT. Let's see what they're saying overseas about certain things like that." And what happens? Listening is not doing. Listening is evaluating because what happens in a free society, you should be able to listen to all points of view and make your own opinion. But what happened? Listening is listening. It's not. It doesn't mean that someone is a sleeper, someone is receiving secret messages or something else like that. That's illegal to do any type of newscast to do that. And many news agencies worldwide know that. No matter whether they're in China, whether they're in Russia, whether they're in Iran, whether they're in Israel. But you know, but again, when we look at this, for example, like even like with this war that's going on with Israel and the massive genocide of the Palestinian people, um, when I listened to some of the comments from the Israeli Defense Forces, The way they speak the same way as many people who abused me when I was in shelter. They gaslight. Um, they try to make up justifications because it's like if you ask them a question, they have to think 30 seconds for an answer. They can't tell you an answer right away. That's how you can tell someone's making up a story. And what happens though is what was done basically on October 7th was wrong. I agree with that. However, what I'm concerned about is basically is when I see about these things about going into certain areas and what's being done so far during this war. Some nights it makes me very upset. I can't even watch the news. But the thing is, with freedom of speech, even though I hear different sides. I try to keep an open mind to both sides, but I evaluate it factually. I don't evaluate it by favoritism or politics. I don't say, well, this group deserves this because of their persecution or past because of their religion. The past is the past. An old war is old war. No one alive has a right to fight an old war. Basically, it's what is happening now. What is the situation now? Not what was the situation then. What is the situation now? And that's where we need objective reporting, whether it is from a foreign news source, and even if the news source is considered antithetical to what's considered what's acceptable by different areas or countries or groups of countries. As one news agency said, when they report on certain things, they said yes, they reported the news that was said by different agencies that are antithetical to what they're reporting, but what they reported later was proved true, and basically certain things and hoaxes were found. So that's an example of holding your guns to good reporting. Or even like another thing, like some of you may have remembered the Mary Tyler Moore show. My parents and I used to watch on Saturday night. One episode, Mary Tyler Moore was before a judge, and the judge said, "Well, I want you to give up your source, or you're going to spend 1 week in jail." And what she do? She put up her hands like this and said, "Okay, I'll spend 1 week in jail." And what did her editor do? Her editor supported her. And what happens? He offered to bail out the same night. She said, "No, I'll spend 1 week in jail." And our editor smiled because he realized that she was practicing the practices of Edward R. Murrow, and that good. And we need to get back to that of Edward R. Murrow and Walter Cronkite, because right now we've lost it. And when I see these sanctions and hear about sanctions are shutting down other things like that, though, it's horrible because on some foreign news sites, I like the science discussions they used to have. They used to have different science discussions. Now, since this thing in 2022, it's very hard to hear science discussions unless you hear something when something bad happens, like with the NASA thing, or with. I wish we could get back to where we could have different newscasts, and we could have foreign newscasts, and we could have regular programs from different countries, because for me, it's nice to see what other people are thinking. And this is what I liked about my work for SDS. I've met a lot of people, shared a lot of ideas with different cultures. The same thing when I worked as a medical researcher. And I think back then we had a better world. We need to get back to it. But sanctions and stifling just because someone's antithetical, and basically because someone's worried about political elections, it makes me wonder. I'm concerned about that. Well, let me know what you think. The best way I prefer to be reached is on Twitter or X at Diana1A, or just a comment in this YouTube stream. Well, this has been a special Ideas with Diana, and I'd like to thank you for listening and watching.